everybody. Welcome to BizBooks with Gene Marks. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot to talk about with our guest today, Meera Kothand, who is the author of the 1 Hour Content Plan, the Solopreneur's Guide to a Year's Worth of Blog Post Ideas in 60 Minutes and Creating Content that Hooks and Sells. We have to talk about book titles as well and blog titles, Meera. It's a long one. But I read your book, Meera. I loved it. There's a lot of stuff that really applied to me and to really anybody that's writing. You might disagree with me, but this is it's not just for bloggers. I think it's for columnists or people that are looking to write creatively, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just for the written medium, even for people who are creating videos or who are creating audios for their audience, this would apply as well.
Yeah, that's what that's exactly what I think. So before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You've written a bunch of books. So how do you make money?
Sure. So, well, I started out, as we were just talking a while ago, I started out pretty much blogging, and I started growing my audience organically from there. I did start off doing freelance writing. I was doing a little bit of client work one-on-one, and then I decided to create digital products. So I had a course, now I've got a membership, and then the books as well. So I like to call it my product ecosystem. So there are a few different ways that people can so-called come into my world and different ways that they can experience my paid content. So pretty much this is how I make money. I've scaled down a lot on client work. I don't do it as much right now. So now the only way people can work with me is through the membership that I have, which is my training and community. And then obviously I've got my books and my courses as well. So I started this by accident almost. I was doing marketing and international relations back in corporate, and I took a little bit of a break when I had my daughter, and I had a bit of a health scare, and I had to go sort myself out. And it was at that time that I felt, okay, I can't go back to work right now. I have to sort myself out. So while I am fixing my health and all of that. So what can I do? How can I still stay connected to sharing my thoughts and being productive? That's how blogging and the business started and grew from there.
Got it.
Yeah.
So Meera, and we're gonna dig into just a minute into some of the concepts in your book, but who's your audience for your book?
Yeah. So my audience, most of them are the one-man shop or the one-woman shop. They are coaches. They are most of them are coaches, service providers as well. Most of them are also thinking of kind of scaling back, adding a digital program option to their business model. And so they pretty much are, like I said, a solopreneur, or they have a very small team, small businesses. So 1 to 5, yeah, at most. So that is, I would say, my main audience, the person that I serve.
Right. Well, there are millions of people that are out there, I think, that are part of your audience. So plenty of opportunities on both sides. And so if I am that solopreneur or entrepreneur, and I'm interested in blogging, because that's what this book is about, not only am I getting, information from your book, but tell us a little bit about the membership. Like, what do I, what am I getting from it? And if you can share with us what the costs are.
Sure. So for me, my membership really is about taking someone who's starting from sub-zero to getting them to make a full-time income with their online business. Now, a full-time income is kind of like a pretty loaded word because it means different things to different people. So it's really up to you what that means. But most people in my audience are trying to get to that 30K, 50K per annum figure. So basically we meet every week, and I walk them through the things that they're going through, what they're going to be focusing on for the month, and then I've got trainings as well. So it's a pretty low cost option because I wanted to give access to most people who are not able to work one-on-one with me. Yeah, so it's less than $30 to join the membership.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, well, listen, consider me to be a client of yours right now for the next 45 minutes, or, and everybody that's watching. So you're giving away a bunch of free services, hopefully in exchange for people buying your book. The first section of your book is really all about sort of positioning yourself before you even like hunker down and start writing. So tell me, what exactly is the driver of change model?
Yeah, absolutely. So the driver of change model is kind of a deep dive into understanding who you serve. So if you don't know who you're going to serve, then your content is going to be all over the place. And the main premise of the book is to kind of get content to work harder for you. So it's not about putting out more content pieces, but it's about getting the right content pieces. And it's not just about nurturing your audience, but it's also about getting that content to come and serve you and serve your business as well. So for me, content is that. And most people think that, yeah, I've got to get content out there because it's the right thing to do. Everyone says you have to do it. But beyond that, I think content should sell and should nurture as well. People kind of have that misconception that, oh, content is just for nurturing. So the driver of change is to figure out, you as a business, what is the transformation that you're providing for your audience? What is that point A and what is that point Z? Because different businesses provide different types of transformation for your audience. If, for instance, you run a Facebook ad agency, then your transformation is going to be different from someone else who is perhaps serving, like a homeschooling family, and then they're creating curriculums for them and helping them homeschool their kids. Their transformation is going to look different. So the driver of change model is pretty much figuring out that transformation that you have laid out for your audience. Once you have that, then you can drill into the spaces that you want to show up and serve your audience.
Sure. So so if that's the case, so when you say actual driver of change, a lot of people are talking about when you write, defining who your audience is, which is fine. But what you're saying though, is it's not just a matter of defining your audience, but what you're going to write about, how that's going to change your audience. In other words, how that's going to help them, how that's going to drive change for them. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. The problem with defining your audience, and we all come across the typical customer avatar exercise. Yeah. And when you are in the early stages of your business, it's actually really hard to define your audience. It's very nice to say, oh yeah, plot out your demographics, plot out where they shop, where they eat, and all of that. But it still doesn't really give you a glimpse into who that person is till you are further down in your business, maybe 1 or 2 years in, and you've had certain interactions. But when you're just really new, your business is new, it's hard to define your audience. So I feel if you take it in this way, if you reframe that question about who you serve in this way, in the driver of change model, it's easier to come to grips with, all right, who is this person and what is my stake? What is that kind of like dent am I creating in this niche or this industry? So I think it's a different take. And for me, it was a lot easier to grasp who my audience is when I thought about it in this sense. Now, and one other thing that someone can do if they're trying to figure out, as you said, define your audience, is to think about who you don't want to serve. So that is another way that you can go about doing it. If defining your audience is so hard, think about who you absolutely don't want to serve. What kind of terms or what kind of language or what kind of brand language would they perhaps identify with, and you don't really want to serve them. So just to give you an example, for me, mompreneur or mom boss or those kind of terms are not a part of my brand vocabulary in any sense of the way. So that's not to say that moms are not a part of my audience. They are, but it's just that they may not necessarily identify with those terms. So that is not someone that I want to serve. So this is something that if someone who's struggling out, as struggling as they're just starting out, can try.
It's funny that you say that, because there's a wide audience that we all are trying to attract, and we don't want to. We're trying to have our cake and eat it too. So we want our blog to be read by as many people as possible. But I guess what you're saying is that it's probably better off for us to really focus on that, a certain segment of the audience that we can really impact. And to be, I don't know, I guess I'm confident enough that, we can really have an impact with that audience while ignoring another audience. Do you follow what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, spot on, G. Because you see, there's no point in attracting lots and lots of people to your site, and you get a ton of traffic to all of your videos. the main thing here is how many of them are going to be converting further down the funnel? How many of them are actually going to go on and do business with you? That is the indicator of whether your content has been successful. Because, you know, you can just drive a bunch of ads, pay a ton of money to Facebook, and then send all of this traffic your way. But if you are getting a mismatch of lots of different type of people, even if they do opt into your email list, how many of them are going to be primed enough to go on and do business with you further down? How many of them are going to sign up for your coaching or whatever that is, however you serve them? That is the key indicator. So there's no point in opening up the tap and attracting a wide audience.
You know, you make a really, really good point in, you know, again, this is in the first section of your book about, you know, you're not only positioning, you know, who your audience is going to be, you're going to be focusing on them. You're going to want to write something that's going to drive their change. And then you talk about writing about, you know, your content, it's hitting a reader at a certain point in their journey, whatever that journey is. And you talk about a stranger, you talk about the casual reader, you talk about you know, a subscriber, an engaged subscriber, and a fan, you know, and then a brand advocate. So tell me a little bit about those stages that you identified and what your thoughts are on where, you know, where my blog or where someone's blog should end up among those stages. Who are these readers?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of understanding your customer journey. So this is something that if I'm not wrong, the copywriting legend Eugene Schwartz came up with, and he was the one who came up with the customer awareness spectrum. So it basically says that people, there are people at different stages. You've got people who are completely new to your site, so they don't really understand the pain points that you are serving them. So for instance, if something that I talk about, email marketing, I talk about it a lot, there might be people who are not even aware of email, not even aware of the importance of email. So that is someone who is completely problem unaware. You might also have someone who is problem aware. So these are people who understand that they have a problem. So they are aware of all of these symptoms that they have, you know, not understanding what type of emails to write, not understanding how to engage their audience. So those are people who I consider problem aware. So you have different types of people coming in and interacting with your site, and you need to have different types of content to serve each of those different readers. Because if you don't, then it's difficult for them to kind of be, you know, nudged further and further down this journey. So beyond the problem aware, you've got people who are solution aware. So maybe they have been shopping around. They've been looking for different types of solutions. They just haven't hit the right one. Or maybe they've had a poor experience with someone else, maybe one of your competitors. And this is where you could show up and you could come in. So the further down the funnel or further down the journey someone is, those are the people who are more likely to convert and become your customers or your brand advocates. Right. And the thing is, this does not happen all at a go. So there might be people who come in and they might not be ready to buy your products and services as yet. They might not be able to, you know, hire you as yet, but that doesn't mean that is a lead that's lost. It just means that they need a little bit more handholding because people are different. And some people are further down the journey. They would be able to go on and do business with you. Others take a little while more. So when you create different types of content pieces, then you are going to engage that person and then move them along. So a few examples of content pieces, people who are typically in the earlier stages, they're trying to figure out the why and the what. So why is this important? Or what should I do with this? You know, so these are the types of questions they have. People who are further in, they have more how type of questions. They're thinking about, okay, how can I implement this? You know, what strategy should I use? How can I do this with my specific situation? How does this work with my specific situation? Now, further down the funnel, or people who are very close to perhaps making a decision on whether they want to do business with you. For those type of people, when you share case studies or when you share results of how your solution helps, now that is going to really spark their interest. So this is in a nutshell how the customer journey works. And when you don't understand the different types of people that are coming into contact with your channel or your site or your business, that's where you're going to lose the pulse on what is going to move the needle for your audience.
So, but can I do it all? I mean, so Meera, so my company, I said I do a lot of writing, but really how I make my money is I have a 10-person company and we sell CRM software, customer relationship management. Okay, so we do like Salesforce and Dynamics and Zoho and a few others, right? So we do blogs on our site. There are people, and I write blogs. There are people that are like, hey, what is CRM? We don't even know what it is. That all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is we are using Zoho, and I need some specific help on coding to integrate this piece of this application with our Zoho application and to make customizations to it. Some real advanced needs. So can the same blogger be considered to be genuine if they're writing introductory stuff for the real novice at the beginning of your chain that you're talking about, and also then turn around and then write some advanced piece later on? Or should we just, should the blogger just say, listen, I'm going to be focusing on the people that are really far along in the process, and I'm going to be writing a high level thing, or I'm going to ignore that group and I'm going to write just people that need the introduction? Can we do it? Can one blogger do all of it, or do you recommend that you choose a certain part of that chain to focus on?
That's a very good question. And I really think it depends on the scope that you have in terms of your team. Yeah. For you to be able to deliver, because, if you look at the really big companies, they have the bandwidth in order to serve so many different types of audiences. Right. So they might have, teams of people writing content for different types of audiences. They might also be able to target different types of audiences with specific ads that kind of lead them into lots of different pages. Now, if you're looking at small companies, or if you're looking at someone who has a 1, 2, 3-person team, what I usually suggest is target the majority. So the bulk of your audience, where do they come in? So for me, I typically always target the problem-aware people. Okay, so one of the programs that I have is on email marketing, and I completely neglect the person who is problem unaware. So if they are not convinced email is for them, or they are, really for the
you don't want to talk
beginning.
To those guys.
Yeah, I don't talk to them at all.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Because, it's going to take me a lot longer to do that. It's going to take me a lot longer to move them along. So I rather focus on the bulk of the people. And for me, the primary audience, I would say, are people who are problem aware. Those are the people I've had a lot of success converting. So that's who I'm going to focus on. But if, let's say, I was part of a bigger organization, I've got more people, I've got different ways I can funnel people within my site, then I might consider doing it in a broader way. I might consider writing for all kinds of different audiences. So it really depends on your bandwidth.
Okay, it's a great answer. Before we leave this section about sort of like preparing for it, just tell us what content tilt is.
Yeah, so the content tilt is something that actually, what is his name? Joe Pelusi came up with. He basically states that you are supposed to, don't create content that everyone else has already been creating. You're supposed to make your dent, put your stake in whatever it is that you are trying to create. And for me, I always say, try and figure out what conversations you want to be a part of. Okay. There are conversations that are already going on in your niche, in your marketplace. What are the conversations that excite you, and where do you think you can add to the conversation? Because there's no point in repeating the conversation. Then, you're just adding layers and layers and layers of content that's already out there. Now, what is going to help your content stand out, which is what he refers to as the tilt, is adding to the literature that's already out there. So one of the things that I always do is, any piece of content that I'm writing, if I feel that I can't add, then it doesn't even excite me. I don't even want to do it. I might let it sit for a while, or I might consider a different piece of content, but it always has to add to the conversation, because if it adds, then it's likely that you are going to perhaps raise an eyebrow, get some interest, get people to take a second glance, because there's just so much noise out there. So the content tilt, or figuring out your stake and how you can add to the conversation, this is what is going to give your content at least a semblance of a fighting chance.
Love it. Okay. So we've talked about, sort of defining what we want to, what we want to write. We talked about how, what we want to write should be driving change in our readers. You've talked about how you want to identify your readers based on where they are in their journey. Are they just new to this, or are they, an advanced or an engaged subscriber as a fan? We talked about, how your content should be, you're putting your thoughts into it, adding something to the reader's experience. So that's all great. Let's move on now. Now you have a whole section of your book that you talk about creating the content plan, and we'll dig into some of the details in some of your other sections. But you say there's 4 parts that should be to a content plan. Can you walk us through, what you mean by that?
Okay, so now how you choose to go about your content plan really depends on how far along I would say you are in business. So I talk about the expert, offer, and goal method of coming up with your content plan. So the expert method is really diving deeper into one particular topic. So you are really showing up as a thought leader. You're showing up as an expert that they can trust, that they can rely on. So through a series of questions, you are basically trying to figure out, how can I get my audience to be more proficient in this topic? Or how can I help them further in this topic? So you're not going wide, you're really going in deep. So you basically have to figure out, okay, let's say I'm talking about email. That's one of the conversations I want to be a part of. What is the transformation that I want someone to have within that category? What is my A? What is the Z? Right now, once you have identified that transformation, then break it down into, okay, how am I going to help someone achieve that transformation? So this is where your categories or content buckets come in. So perhaps for me, it could be lead generation. It could be learning how to write engaging emails, or learning how to create engaging sequences. Now, from that category or bucket, you break it down further into different type of subcategories or sub buckets. So again, going in deeper. All right, let's say your idea, your goal is to help your audience write really engaging sequences that convert. Now, how do I help them get more proficient in this? What do they need to know? And then that breaks down further into topics. So perhaps knowing how to structure your sequences, knowing the different types of content that goes into sequences. Now, when you do it in this way, you can create lots and lots of content ideas. And you don't have to use them all at once, but you're basically adding to the swipe file that you can dig into anytime. So this really avoids the situation of staring at that blank page, or not knowing what to publish when you have to have a post that goes out today, or you have a video that goes out next week. And it just removes that obstacle when you break it down in this way. So I typically recommend having about 3 to 5 main categories or buckets, depending on who you serve, how you want to serve, and obviously your products and services. And then break it down into categories, subcategories, and then topics. Just by asking the question, what does my audience need to know to get more proficient in this particular area?
It's funny how you approach it, like with any business, whenever you have a problem, and it's a big problem, the way that you solve it is by breaking it down into smaller problems, and then attacking each one. And that sounds like exactly what you're saying here, is that, like, you write about email marketing. Well, email marketing is this giant field, right? So you're like, okay, well, I know I'm in the email marketing space here, but I need to break that down into categories and into subcategories. You mentioned, tell us about what you mean by a swipe file.
Yeah, so a swipe file is basically a piece of, how do I put it? It could be a folder, it could be a spreadsheet. It's just inspirational content, or headlines or subject lines that you've swiped from people that you've seen out in the web. So it doesn't mean copying.
It's a bunch of stolen information, right? No, I'm just kidding.
So, the main thing is you don't want to start with a blank slate. You want to lead from looking at what other people have done, and then seeing what works with your style and seeing how that could fit into what can you kind of basically learn from that. So I have a swipe file of basically anything, landing pages or webinar pages, just to draw inspiration from, because when you are able to draw inspiration, then it's easier for you to come up with your own content. So that is basically what I mean by a swipe file.
So for example, like I have 2 places where I go where I write that I'm constantly keeping notes. I have OneNote, which is part of Office. So whenever I see something, sometimes I'll be listening to a podcast and somebody will say something interesting, and I'll be like, I could offer my thoughts to what this person just said, and I'll make a note of it in OneNote. And then oftentimes I'm online browsing and I'll find an article that I find of interest that I'd like to comment on or expand on, and use it as a basis for something I want to do. So I'll bookmark it. So again, I'm keeping notes in like an online note application, and I also have a folder of bookmarks of potential content ideas. Is that considered to be a swipe file?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So just like you use OneNote, I use Evernote on my Mac. So anywhere I come across a landing page or webinar page that I really like, I would just clip it and it goes into a kind of like a digital notebook or a folder with webinar pages or landing pages. So let's say I'm really stuck at one point in time. Let's say I'm trying to flesh out landing page or something. Just go in there, look for inspiration. Now make sure, if you can, just like what you mentioned, have a note in there about how this could apply. So, usually when we clip something, we do have a situation where, okay, hey, actually, I could use this, or I could share my thoughts on this. So just make a quick note. You might not be able to execute it immediately, but when you come back to it, it's not going to be lost. You would know, all right, it kind of brings you back to why you clipped it in the first page. So and if you are a paper and pen person, but like a lot of people are, you could also keep it in like a digital or in a paper planner, anything that works for you. The key thing here is have a place where you can clip all of these pieces of snippets just for inspiration.
Yeah, it's great advice. And that's exactly what I do. And it serves, sometimes I'm drawing a blank as to what to write about. And I go, to my bookmarks or to my notes, and I see it all there. And it definitely brings, that is definitely something that would make something really good. So, okay, great. That's great advice. Now, you also talk about sort of the 10 different types of blog posts that people could be making. Okay. And I can list them out for you if you don't know them off the top of your head, but they're interesting because you're right in that you've got to sort of take a position, take an angle as to what you want your blog post to be. So I'm gonna name up just the first one, the first couple actually, and then I'm gonna leave it back to you. And by the way, if you need to like refer to any notes,
I'm just pulling that up myself.
Yeah, it's funny too, because sometimes people ask me about stuff that I write, and I'm like, did I write that? I forget. Can you remind me what I said here? But for example, one of the types of blog posts that you said is like picking a fight, which is which is like somebody writes something and you're like, what, I'm going to go after that person because I disagree with them, and that's sort of creating controversy, right? And then some of the other blog posts that you had mentioned, what for example is mistakes, which I imagine is like, hey, here's some of the mistakes that I've made, or here's some mistakes that you can avoid. And then a third one is like case studies, just of customer success. So let's just talk about just a couple of these. Do you have the list in front of you, or is there any? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I guess what my question is, if of all the 10 that you list out here, what are your posts? You say you write a lot about email marketing. So do you do them all, or do you focus on one type of post as an
I love this question. Now, for me, hands down, my favorite would be the myth and the mistake.
But if you do that, but you've got to have a thick skin, right? Because
yes, exactly. You do have to have a thick skin. You do you're coming into this knowing you might ruffle some feathers.
Yes.
Very often what you're writing might be a little bit polarizing. So you might repel some people.
Yes.
Now, for me, I do this a lot with my blog posts, but another place that I love to do this is within my emails. So now, email sequences, why I love them is because we spoke about the journey that someone goes through. When you know how to weave your sequences, your email sequences, you're pretty much taking them through that journey. So if you're going to pitch something at the back end, because, people think of email as being separate from blogging or vlogging, but, it's also a part of your content marketing strategy. So I think people need to know how to view email as being a part of your larger content marketing strategy. So right. I love to use myth or mistake emails specifically within the first 2 to 3 days that someone is on my email list. So it gives me a chance, number one, to ruffle some feathers. Number two, gives them a chance to know what my perspectives are, which is when I'm using those type of posts, is going to be pretty different because I'm going to come right out and call out certain things that I perhaps disagree with what is going on in my niche, or disagree with certain dominant points of view that the bigger influencers might be sharing. Now, at this stage, a lot of people might be like, hey, this is not for me. They might choose to leave. And that's perfectly fine because I want to retain only the ones who are, you don't have to completely agree with me, but they have to at least have an open mind in order to listen to my perspective or listen to, okay, what is she saying? Yeah. And the ones that do stay on are the ones that are likely to go on and do business. So hands down, my favorite are myth and mistake, because I've noticed that when you are able to change someone's perspective or show them a different angle, this is when you have kind of got them by that hook. They're like, my golf, I'm so happy I found you. This is the kind of response that you're going to get when you share that kind of content.
So do you enjoy reading blog posts where people talk about, that take a stand or talk about myths or mistakes? Is this, do you tend to lead, is that why you like to write those types of things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because for me, I find those type of content, that kind of content, a lot more engaging than your typical how-to. Right. I want to be constantly challenged. I want to be engaged. I want something that gives me an aha moment, something that makes me go, I never thought about that. Now, that is the type of content that is done well. The people whose content has given me those type of aha moments or light bulbs, so-called, those are the ones I tend to stay and buy from. I tend to do business with, and I want to refer my audience to them as well.
It's funny, when I look at the 10 different types of posts, and guys, for you guys watching this again, you read Meera's book. But just so you can see, we talk about myths and mistakes, maybe trends that you're identifying, a success and failure blog, a blog of interviews, like where you're interviewing somebody and, you see the question and answer format, or a blog that's like a case study. There's all different types that you can do. And one thing that I've learned is that I feel like each one of these types of blogs that you mentioned take a different type of skill set. There are some people that do interviews really well and can write about them really well. And then there are other people that can pick a fight really well and make their case very strongly and eloquently as well. So I guess, Meera, of the sort of the 10 examples that you gave, if it were me, I'd be like, okay, not only what do I enjoy reading, but which one of these 10 or which 2 or 3 of these 10 do I think I can actually do competently? Because it's kind of like writing nonfiction. And like I can write my stupid, columns on small business, but I love to read fiction, but I could never write fiction because that's a whole different type of skill set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, when you have content that kind of brushes along all of these 10 different verticals that we spoke about, right. It gives an insight to your brand. It gives a better picture of your brand, the type of perspectives that you share when it comes to the topic. And like you said, not all of us are going to be versatile in writing all of those different verticals. It does take time. Like for me, the myth or mistake, where I would easily say that that's my strength. The interview is not as much. I don't enjoy doing it as much. But it's good to have content from all of those different verticals, and you kind of circle through. So if you feel yourself writing more of this and you think, I need to give them a different type of content piece, I want them to engage with my content in a different way, then think about cycling through to a different vertical.
Absolutely true. Okay. And in the short time that we have together, I have to skip over some of the other great advice and content that that you have in your book. But again, guys, read Meera's book and you'll get a lot of that. Well, one chapter that, of course, I have to talk about is you have a whole chapter that kind of lists out the components. And Meera, this is chapter 11, if you're keeping track at home, of your components of creating a blog post that keeps readers hooked. And you list out sort of 8 things. And I just want to pull a couple of those things out and just get your hot take on them. The first one and the biggest one is creating a good headline. So give us some thoughts on headlines for your blog.
Yeah. So when it comes to headlines, there's an abundance of swipe files out there for headlines. You could just Google, just go and do a search for, I don't know, top headlines or something like that. Yeah. You're bound to get lots and lots of swipe files that you can download, templates that you can download. The thing about a headline is, just one thing I want to share is, people tend to stuff too much into a headline. So I kind of see a headline. Hold on.
That comes from somebody who wrote a book titled The 1 Hour Content Plan, the Solopreneur's Guide to a Year's Worth of a Blog Post Ideas in 60 Minutes of Creating Content that Hooks and Sells.
No, that's a subhead. All right. Now the subhead clarifies your topic. So yeah, I see the headline as like your billboard. It gets your foot in the door. So the biggest mistake I see people making with headlines is trying to stuff too much into that. So I would say, just think about what would get their attention. That is the main job of your headline. Your job of your headline is to get them to, all right, click perhaps, and then read that first line. That's all that a headline has to do. And there are a ton of different variations that you can explore. But the main thing is to think of it as that huge billboard, and you're trying to get their foot in. Okay. That's all.
How important is an introduction to the blog post? I mean, I would imagine, listen, we live in a world where, people spend like 30 seconds reading, a blog before they move on. So to me, it's like the first paragraph or so is probably the most critical part. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I do. For me, I love writing introductions. The thing is, when you have an introduction that works, people don't realize till they're halfway down the page that they've actually read so much. Right. So it's the way that you lead the person in. But not just that, it's also about the way you're structuring your sentences. We're so used to, those huge bricks of leading on sentences one after the other. But when you're writing for the web, it's a slightly different style of writing. Obviously, it varies. If you're writing for different types of publications, you do need to follow their style. But I am a huge fan of like short sentences where basically you're breaking all the rules that your English teacher taught you. Don't start with a but, don't start with an and, but those are the types that you should do, because it gets people. This is the way we converse typically, and when you have short sentences and maybe 2 to 3 sentences at most within a paragraph, it's very easy to lead people down your page, and they may not even realize when they're halfway down that piece of content. So the introduction is, there are lots of different ways that you can start your introduction. But I agree with you that it's my favorite part of the content, because if that works, people are really going to be hooked into that particular piece.
Yeah, it's a great point. I really didn't think about that. Like, to me, like a real true sign of a great introduction is where I suddenly find myself 2/3 down the article without even knowing it.
Exactly.
And that, I'm thinking about that now. Some of the bloggers that I like to follow, that's exactly what they do. They hook me in and they draw me, more into it. What is, Meera, what's a sticky asset?
A sticky asset meaning?
Yeah, well, you mentioned sticky assets as part of like visuals and other
right. Okay.
component of your blog.
Correct. So now this is really based on preference, how you want to structure your piece of content.
Right.
So for me, the way my blog used to be structured before was Pinterest was a huge traffic platform of mine. I had a lot of people following me on Pinterest, finding my content on Pinterest. So one of my sticky assets was a pin image within my blog post. Now, another type, I always have that, is an opt-in form, an invitation for them to get on my email list. So this is something that people typically always just stuff at the very end of their content. So imagine if you have 1,500 word post or a 2,000 word piece of content, not everyone is going to stay till the very end. And if you're going to leave your invitation to get on your email list at the very end, then you're going to lose that person. They're going to probably just leave. So I always like to have it right in the middle, one of so-called my sticky assets, right in the middle of that piece of content. So that's something that I always do. Now, when you want something to be sticky, it has to be aligned with what you're writing.
Right.
So whatever you're trying to get them in the door, you're trying to get them on your email list, what you're offering, most of the time we offer like a lead magnet, we offer a freebie that has to be aligned with the topic, the content that they've just been reading. So if you are talking about, for instance, if I'm talking about content marketing, I should not be offering a freebie on maybe something else like Facebook ads. It has to be aligned. Yeah.
You see the best examples of that is, just in major media, if you're reading an article on, on any site like The Guardian, where I write, and then, halfway down, there'll be links to other related articles,
Yeah.
So if you're enjoying this topic, this is connected to this topic, you might want to click on here and go there. And if you're a publisher, that's their sticky asset. They want people to stay on their site because they get advertising dollars
spot on.
Based on those clicks. So, okay. Before we leave, this one topic, because it's a really great chapter. I just want to get your thoughts on length. I mean, we can't have a conversation about blogging without talking about length. I mean, different people will tell you, oh, it should be just a few hundred words. Other people should be it's long form. Google, and you mentioned in the chapter about optimizing your blog for SEO. Google has, different online media people tell me like, oh no, Google wants you to have like 1,000-word blog if it's going to be picked up for, by them on search. And listen, we're not writing this for our health. We're doing this stuff to attract attention, to get customers, to engage an audience. Yeah. So yeah, we do want to make Google happy too. So give us your thoughts on the length of a blog.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you said, you're going to get lots of conflicting information.
Yeah.
So what I have heard as well is 900 to about 1,200 is the best length. Okay. And this is what Google is going to view favorably in terms of SEO.
Okay.
So, and I usually have people asking me, yeah, but what if I only have something to write for 300 words? Well, okay. Usually when someone says something like that, I would say, would this work better for perhaps on social media? When you're writing a caption on Instagram, for instance, or LinkedIn, would something of that length work better there? That said, it's kind of like, it's like a sticky situation, my response, the one that I typically say is it has to be as long as it has to be.
Yep.
Same thing with the sales page. How long should it be? It has to be as long as it does its job.
Yep.
The same thing goes with any piece of content. But because we have to play by the rules of SEO and Google and stuff like that, 900 to 1,000 words is so-called the textbook answer. And if you feel that there's no way you could ever meet that, then I would say, think whether you can use that content in different other mediums.
Yeah,
for you to showcase your content.
It's funny you say that too, but English teachers and people that do this for a living, academics, they bristle when they hear saying, no, it needs to be between 900 and 1,200 words, right? They're like, no, you want your writing to be as succinct as possible and deliver. You can get your thought through in 200 words. That is what professional, authors do, And, but, to have Google tell us, no, you've got to make that 900 words for anybody to read
exactly.
it. It's a little tough, but okay. That's great advice. you have a whole chapter about promoting your blogs as well. And you mentioned, there's a whole bunch of different platforms. We know there's social media, there's, outreach, there's email, there's automation, there's paid search if you want to do that. I'm guessing because you're an email person, you might lean more towards recommending to your clients that like, hey, if you really want to get your blog seen, you might want to have, email campaigns around it. But maybe I'm wrong. Do you feel there is a better promotional pathway than others of the ones that you list?
So email is hands down my best channel in that sense. But I don't use email just to promote my blog post. So if I'm just sending my list saying, oh, I have a new piece of content, go and check it out. If that's the only thing I'm going to be sending, then I would say no. I mean, please don't do that. So, I mean, this goes into talking about email and the kind of emails we should be sending. But yeah, I mean, definitely don't just use your email list to promote specific types of content pieces. I mean, just don't tell them, oh, I have a new post, go check it out. You want to send other types of emails to engage your list. But yes, you can use your email list and let them know that you have a new piece of content. You can do that as well. But I am a huge believer in, stick to one main traffic platform. Okay. When you're starting out. So where most of your audience are hanging out, where you feel you're getting the most traction, stick to that. And once you are getting traffic, but not just traffic, you're able to convert that traffic to subscribers and do this on a regular basis, then I would say move on to a different traffic channel. Now, apart from that, apart from relying on those platforms, any kind of opportunities where you can get visible, like a podcast or a summit or any type of conferences, I would say use that. The main thing is your brand ecosystem. You want it to slowly branch out as your business grows. So if, let's say I'm using Pinterest, I have got my email, what else can I do to expand on the way people come and find me and come and find my content? So it could be Instagram, or it could be, like I said, like a summit, or different ways. But as your business grows, you want to be expanding on that ecosystem as well. So different ways of promotion. There's no right or wrong answer. It really depends on what kind of brings you the most traction.
Yeah, I guess you go to where your audience is, right? And you try and focus on that. And you're so right about email, whether it's email or social media. I mean, you spend like your whole life advising people on email and email campaigns. I mean, you out of anybody know that is like both art and science. That's like a specialty to become great at email campaigns, right? And then there's some people that are like, hey, like Facebook is where we want to be at. To be an expert on Facebook advertising, Facebook, promotion, that's like a full-time job in itself, because there's so many different ways you can do that. So it's great advice to focus on one channel, at least initially. Okay, we're getting near the end of this. You have a, I'm going to ask you just to make some recommendations in a minute of some tools, maybe that, you mentioned a few websites and some tools that can help. But before we do, you do have a whole chapter about an editorial calendar and some, do's and don'ts and mistakes you can make. Talk to me a little bit about what you mean by an editorial calendar.
Yeah, so an editorial calendar, basically, it tells you not just when you're creating a piece of content, but why. It helps you kind of link the why and the when together. Most people think of an editorial calendar as, all right, just having a calendar and knowing, all right, this date, this is going to go out, this date, this is going to go out. But you see, a calendar has to kind of give you a 360 degree. For me, that is a real proper calendar. Right. It bridges the publishing aspects, and the strategy at the same time. So for me, I like to work around campaigns. So if, let's say, I have a push for a particular program this month, this is something that I'm launching out to my email list or my customers, then every single piece of content that I'm creating this particular month would be around that, introducing that offer or talking about that offer, introducing the idea. So from emails to social media to blog or videos, every single thing, that message would run through all of my different channels, my content channels.
And
so for me, your editor.
Do you suggest like maybe like picking a theme for like a whole month, for example, and then just generating content around that theme for the month, and then the next month having a different, a different topic?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I suggest
Mhm.
you do if you don't have as many products and services as yet, if you're just starting out. Now, for some campaigns can be longer. They can be 2 to 3 months. There are people who do really massive launches, like, 6, 7 figure launches. They do need a longer period of time to scale up on maybe their ads, or build hype and intrigue and tease their audience and all of that. So it needs a longer period of time. So the length of the campaign can vary depending on what you need to do for that particular product or service. So for me, this is how I would plan out within my editorial calendar. So I am a huge paper pen person. So I use the Create Blog and Editorial Planner. It's kind of like the companion that goes with the 1 hour content plan.
Okay.
So based on that, I would work around themes, could be campaigns that someone needs, the content pieces that someone needs in order to say yes to maybe my product or my membership or my service that I'm offering. So yeah, there are different ways that you can do this, but the editorial calendar basically has to kind of bridge the publishing aspect and the strategy aspect at the same time.
Makes complete sense. Okay, so as a takeaway, you mentioned a few tools at the very end of your book. So just share with our, and again, guys, you can get this. And Meera, you're not seeing this right now, but there, we're flashing your book up on the screen. We have a URL to your site as well. So all of that is there in the video, so you don't have to worry about that. But but just, for people that are watching this right now, give us a couple tools that you love to use.
Yeah.
You mentioned Evernote for swipe files, by the way, which
yes, I'm loving Evernote right now for swipe files, because it really helps me get organized. There are a couple more that I always go to. One is Answer the Public, where it's a free tool, gives you a couple of searches and helps you understand the type of questions that people are looking out for. That's one thing. The other one recently that I came across is Keywords Everywhere.
Okay.
And it shows you the search volume of a keyword. It's more for SEO, and it also gives you suggestions for long tail keywords. So, if a particular keyword is really competitive, search volume is incredibly high, no way you're going to rank for that. It does give you suggestions of other types of variations or combinations that you can use. So I would say that's another one that I'm really loving right now. Yeah.
Can I? I got to ask. I don't want to like go back into the weeds, but you do mention keywords, and it's like a tool for keywords. So and it's really important that our blogs be found, because that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
We do want to have readers. So people talk about you want to make sure that you include keywords in a blog throughout. I'm not thinking about that when I'm writing my blog. So should I be? In other words, should I write my blog and then say, okay, now that I'm done writing it, I want to sprinkle in some keywords somewhere into that blog? Like, what do you recommend to your clients about making sure you've got the right balance of keywords without it seeming, too crazy with the SEO?
Correct.
Stuff?
For me, the priority is always serve the audience first before you serve SEO or serve Google, because, I have tried that. When you try and infuse your keywords in, it can be really off, can make your introduction sound
goofy,
robotic almost. Yeah, it's really weird. So I would say, if you're given a choice, I would say serve that audience first, get them in, hook them in. And then the secondary aspect, I would say, is the knowing how to place your keywords or mention your keywords. Yeah. So for me, when I'm writing, when I'm planning out in my swipe file, I roughly already know the keyword that I'm going to use, because I usually do all of my research beforehand. So before I even sit down and write, I kind of know, okay, this is going to be my headline. What are the rough points I'm going to have? What is the keyword that I want to target? But it kind of goes to the back when I'm actually writing, because you want to write for your audience. You want to hook them in. Yeah.
Great. Meera Kothand is the author of the 1 hour content plan, the Solopreneur's Guide to a Year's Worth of Blog Post Ideas in 60 Minutes, and creating content that hooks and sells. Meera, you're awesome. Great advice. Stick around, by the way, when I stop recording. I just want to say goodbye to you personally. But thank you so much, guys. You can buy Meera's book on Amazon. There's Kindle edition that's available. Paperback as well, Meera, or is it just all online?
Yes, there is. Yeah.
All right, that's great. So thank you. Great stuff. Look forward to talking to you again when your next book comes out. I know you publish pretty regularly, so keep doing what you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gene.
Okay.